Welcome to God and Country Biblical Exposition. At the end of each January, there's the March for Life in Washington. Solemn remembrance of the passing of Roe versus Wade, legalizing abortion back in January of 1973. And of course, it's a rally to urge the country to reverse that decision. It's been 46 years since abortion was legalized in America, far more years than the Christian community ever expected. At this time each year, I try to put together a special program addressing this issue of abortion. There is so much that can be said, but as the Apostle Paul wrote, to write the same thing again to you is no trouble to me, but it is a safeguard for you. There are many aspects of the abortion issue that can be discussed. It brings up all sorts of biblical topics and insights about the nature of sin, the nature of God, about the techniques of the wicked. A full discussion about abortion could take quite a few days. Now, this year, the up-and-coming conservative, Ben Shapiro, spoke at the rally in Washington. He actually did his podcast from the rally. And his address was debunking the 10 most popular pro-choice arguments. I highly recommend that you watch that speech either on YouTube or go to the Daily Wire. Shapiro brought something to the pro-life movement and the rally that has been missing for years: cutting ethical arguments. Because for a long time, leaders in the pro-life movement have tried to be politically correct, to be nonpartisan, thinking that this would ingratiate the public to their cause. So they avoided serious conservative pundits with harsh but true arguments against abortion. And that approach always fails, because if people are to change, they must be confronted with their sin. And Shapiro did a great job giving recent pro-abortion statements from politicians and social leaders, and then refuting them soundly. But still, there was one truth that he failed to address. The truth that is really necessary if abortion is to be overturned in America, and that is the wrath of God. The coming judgment of God upon abortionists and our nation, the judgment of God upon blood guilt. Because people will only change if there is a fear of God. They're not going to change even by the best scientific or rational arguments for the personhood of the child. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 6, by mercy and truth, iniquity is purged, and by the fear of the Lord, men depart from evil. I discussed this whole issue a number of years ago in radio program 274, which was entitled The Biblical Critique of the Pro-Life Movement. You can check that out. But for today's program, the one aspect I would like to cover again is the spiritual moral blindness in the pro-choice movement. So much so that the proponents of abortion are calling abortion a virtue, a right, a good thing. And it is no longer being defended as a necessary evil. The proponents are selling abortion as righteousness, and those who oppose abortion as being evil. And this moral reversal is something to behold in society. Governor Cuomo and the New York State legislature, because of the Supreme Court now having a conservative majority, and now they have a remote concern that the federal government might allow states to opt out of abortion. They just passed a law in New York increasing the legalization of abortion, allowing abortion right up to the moment of natural birth. It's basically infanticide. You should have heard the cheering in that legislative hall when the governor signed this bill. And the Freedom Tower in New York City was lit up pink, as if this was some sort of victory for women's rights. The right to kill your child is being celebrated. This last year, Chelsea Clinton said abortion is good because it adds $3.7 million to the economy by keeping women in the workforce. Last year, Lena Dunham said that she regretted not having an abortion, which is just another example of how much the left is now wanting to support abortion. A pro-choice group recently put out an ad, quote, the ad, set to gentle music, consists of a video of a beautiful blue-eyed, bubbly baby girl smiling at the camera and laughing. After a few seconds, the video cuts to a black screen with the words, "She deserves to be a choice." So what kind of moral confusion is in the minds of those who believe that somebody deserves to be murdered? Back in 2015, pro-abortionists started a movement called Shout Your Abortion. The purpose was to remove any stigma of having an abortion by having many prominent women come out of the closet giving testimony regarding their abortion. In November of last year, leading Hollywood actresses had a stand-up for Shout Out Your Abortion party to celebrate the release of a new book urging women to have an abortion. Also, during the Brett Kavanaugh hearing, Yale law students and faculty wrote and signed an open letter to the dean of Yale, criticizing Brett Kavanaugh, his nomination to the Supreme Court, and saying that people will die if he's confirmed. And the main objection in this letter was to Kavanaugh's pro-life position and the possibility that he will overturn Roe versus Wade. So how is it that people will die if Kavanaugh is confirmed? Since he's pro-life, you would think that more people's lives will be saved. But this is the moral confusion of the students and the faculty at Yale. And this is their law school. So what is happening in our culture is identical to what happened to ancient Israel in her apostasy, where Isaiah wrote, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil." Not only can't they distinguish between the two, but they reverse the two. And this is the sociopathic mind of unsaved people when they abandon God's truth. They fall further and further into darkness. A sociopath is a person with a seared conscience. 1 Timothy chapter 4, but the Spirit explicitly says that in latter times some will fall away from the faith, paying attention to deceitful spirits and doctrines of demons, by means of the hypocrisy of liars, seared in their own conscience as with a branding iron. So their God-given conscience is destroyed by their evil disposition, and rather than listening to the voice of their God-given conscience, they prefer to listen to the voice of demons. Also, Romans chapter 1, as a people depart from God, verse 21, they gradually become futile in their speculations, and their foolish hearts are darkened. And verse 28, God gives them over to a depraved mind. This is the only logical explanation for what we see happening around us today. Last year, Michelle Wolf, who made a name for herself by being the 2018 comedian at the Correspondents' Dinner in Washington, was given an HBO show. And one of her segments was a promo for abortion. And her show really demonstrated very clearly the current pro-abortion mindset. Celebrate abortion. And she began, "Some people say abortion is killing a baby. It is not. It is stopping a baby from happening. Like the movie Back to the Future, where you change history." So stop and think about how that statement cleverly redefines murder to alleviate the guilt. You're not killing somebody, you're just changing history. And then she went on with the latest attack against the pro-life position, and we're hearing this everywhere, quote, "Pro-life is a propaganda term that isn't real. These people aren't anti-abortion, they are anti-woman. If these people were actually pro-life, they would be fighting hard for health care children education, gun control, and the environment. They don't care about life. They just care about birth. And her audience applauded wildly. This is the latest justification for abortion, that pro-choice people are actually more pro-life. Believe it or not, this is what they're now claiming. And this is their conclusion given the moral universe they live in. The claim is that Republicans only care about life in the womb, but Democrats care about life outside the womb. Therefore, Democrats are just as much, if not more, pro-life. Because Democrats believe in helping people's lives with government handouts and wealth redistribution. They're trying to make a moral equivalency so that one can make up for being a murderer by being a socialist. Now, what's more alarming here is that this is a very common justification now being used by leftist evangelicals who vote Democrat. By making a moral equivalency between pro-life and pro-abortion, they justify voting for pro-choice Democrats. Because they can claim, hey, I still care about the life of people since I'm for the government having more social welfare handouts. A leading evangelical pastor, part of the Gospel Coalition actually, Thabiti Anyabwile, last year had an editorial in the Washington Post. And Thabiti explained why Christians who are pro-life should vote for the Democratic candidate. He supported Hillary Clinton because, in short, Democrats care more for life since they are allegedly more for racial justice and immigrants than the Republicans. There's another seminar speaker professing to be a Christian, Mark Charles, a Native American who is making the same case in Christian circles, promoting pro-choice candidates. He actually spoke at my son's college, Geneva. He stated, I also realized the pro-life movement largely was not pro-life. They were pro-issue, and I didn't want to be identified with them. Donald Trump is not pro-life. You cannot assault women and be pro-life. You cannot call Mexicans rapists and murderers and be pro-life. You cannot say the things he says and be pro-life. Well, first, Donald Trump has lived the life of a playboy, but he has never been charged with assaulting innocent women. Second, Donald Trump did not call Mexicans rapists and murderers. Donald Trump was speaking about some illegal aliens. And third, notice how pro-life is being redefined as being for open borders and for socialism. As if in the hierarchy of God's law, those policies trump the sixth commandment, thou shalt not murder. So you're going to be hearing this argument coming from leftist evangelicals, like Sojourners, to justify voting for pro-choice candidates and the pro-choice party, so be prepared. This claim needs to be addressed. Is this really valid reasoning on the part of Michelle Wolf and other pro-choice proponents that pro-abortionists are truly pro-life? Is it true that pro-life people don't care about people outside the womb? What pro-life people are saying is yes, you have to take responsibility for your child. And yes, that is going to create hardship because parenting is a hard job. But realize, the pro-choice crowd sees that as not caring about parents because parents are being made to take responsibility. Pro-abortionists are in effect saying that pro-lifers are not caring about the parents because they are making the parents have a baby and they're not letting the parent murder the child. You know what this is? This is simply the timeless standard definition or argument for murder. My rights come before the rights of other people. I can get rid of people who get in my way. I can get rid of people who get in the way of my plans. Why do you think people murder other people? They want to get rid of people that bother them. And this new argument that the pro-choice movement is really pro-life is a rewording of the same argument that the pro-choice crowd has always made, that the right of the parent to be free from the responsibility trumps the life of the child. And that has always been the definition and the justification of murder. George Orwell said political language is designed to make lies sound truthful and murder respectable, and to give the appearance of solidity to pure wind. Now, the way to detect the deception, to know when it is Satan or the serpent speaking to you, is to get back to the basics. By their fruits, you will know them. If you are murdering someone, you are evil. Regardless of your justifications, remember that pure evil always has justifications. And all of the reasons justifying murder do not make murder any less evil. In fact, if murder is accompanied by ideological justifications, it shows even a greater degree of evil. So, Michelle Wolf went on in this piece saying, abortion should be on demand. It should be on the dollar menu at McDonald's. Quote, these days, abortion providers have been terrorized by the right into downplaying their abortion services. You should be proud of it. You're doing a good thing. Then Michelle Wolf marched out on stage with a marching band, throwing confetti in a salute to abortion. Here's the clip.
Abortion, I salute you! Women, if you need an abortion, get one! If you want an abortion, get one! If you're not pregnant but you think you eventually might be and want to order a future abortion, get one! If you're pregnant and you want to be pregnant, don't get one! It's up to you, and it doesn't have to be a big deal. It's actually a great deal. It's about $300. That's like 6 movie tickets. Movie tickets, a bad deal. And women, don't forget, you have the power to give life, and men will try to control that. Don't let them! God bless abortions, and God bless America!
So this is what we're up against in America's days of apostasy. Not only the evil, but a deep, deep moral blindness. And if you don't keep your spiritual wits about you, it's very easy to be taken in by the culture's apathy toward abortion and hence forget the gravity of the evil. So let me take a moment to review the biblical depiction of abortion. Because one of the lies is that the Bible doesn't speak against abortion, as if God doesn't care. First, murder is clearly condemned by God. The first commandment to mankind after Noah left the ark. Genesis chapter 9, whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God he made man. As for you, be fruitful and multiply, populate the earth abundantly and multiply in it. Only God has the right to take a life. And notice how Planned Parenthood ideologically is set against the commandment to populate the earth and to multiply in it. And like Planned Parenthood, it was the evil Pharaoh of Egypt who commanded the midwives to kill the newborn Jewish children to reduce the population of unwanted children. Exodus chapter 1. Are children in the womb persons? Absolutely. The Bible makes this very clear. Jacob and Esau were persons struggling in their mother's womb. Genesis 25:22. The prophet Jeremiah, Isaiah, John the Baptist, and Paul were all called to be prophets in their mother's womb. And Jesus himself existed as a person in the womb of Mary. To kill Jesus in the womb would be to kill Jesus, as Herod tried to do in killing all of the babies in Bethlehem. And to preclude any question about the personhood of a baby in the mother's womb, the law of Moses requires the death penalty for anyone who fatally injures a fetus in a mother's womb. Exodus 21:22. if men struggle with each other and strike a woman with child, so that she gives birth prematurely, yet there is no injury, he shall surely be fined as the woman's husband may demand of him, and he shall pay as the judge decides. But if there is further injury to the fetus, then you shall appoint as a penalty life for life. The womb is to be the mother's place of protection and safety for her child. The mother who has her child ripped apart in the womb is committing an act of heartless, cold cruelty, which is the selfish condition of all natural, unconverted men and women. Romans chapter 3 describes the condition of the lost. Their feet are swift to shed blood. So hidden within every person is a murderous heart, and the ungodly cannot get enough of killing their unborn. So they have to keep it legal. 1 million babies murdered every year in America, 50 million, over 50 million a year worldwide. The unsaved world is the culture of death. And recognize also that abortion is not a recent practice. To eliminate unwanted children, the ancient people used drugs and sharp instruments and pressure, or they simply abandoned their newborns in the wilderness. And to justify abortion, religious people in the ancient world practiced child sacrifice, which wasn't really about pleasing their gods as much as it was about getting rid of unwanted children. Leviticus chapter 20. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "You shall also say to the sons of Israel, any man from the sons of Israel, or from the aliens sojourning in Israel, who gives any of his offspring to Moloch, shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones." Did the Israelites enforce this? No, they tolerated child sacrifice. And make no mistake about it, the children sacrificed to Moloch, or to the Phoenician name Baal, were the unwanted children of the day. The worshippers would sacrifice their defective children, hoping that Baal would reward them with healthy children. And parents who are economically or socially hindered by a child could be freed from parental responsibility by performing child sacrifice. But the greatest driving force behind the child sacrifice cult was to remove the unwanted consequences of the sexual promiscuity promoted in Baal worship. The temple prostitutes would sacrifice the children born to them, as would the worshipers who came to the sexual orgies of Baal. And this is why the Bible always couples child sacrifice and sexual immorality. Isaiah 57:5. You who inflame yourselves among the oaks, under every luxuriant tree, who slaughter the children in the ravines under the crags, under the clefts of the crags. The inflaming under the oaks is a reference to the immorality committed in the rural, shady worship places of Baal. The unwanted children were then thrown from the cliffs. Ezekiel 16. Moreover, you took your sons and daughters, whom you had borne to me, and sacrificed them to idols, to be devoured. Were your harlotries, your adulteries, so small a matter? You slaughtered my children and offered them up to idols by causing them to pass through the fire. So Ezekiel is saying that not only was their immorality bad enough, but they also killed the children born from that immorality. The legalization of abortion in 1973 was the natural consequence of the sexual revolution of the 1960s. Abortion has always been about liberating people from the consequences of sexual freedom. And it's widely documented that the vast majority of abortions are performed by unmarried women. So the indictment against abortion is not only murder, but promiscuity and disloyalty and indifference, selfishness, coldness of heart, and any nation that enters the path of sexual license ends up shedding innocent blood. Ezekiel 23. Then declare to them their abominations, for they have committed adultery, and blood is on their hands. And they even caused their sons, whom they bore to me, to pass through the fire. Psalm 106. They even sacrifice their sons and their daughters to the demons, and shed innocent blood, the blood of their sons and their daughters, whom they sacrificed to the idols of Canaan. And the land was polluted with blood. This is blood guilt. And God guarantees that a nation will always pay the price for blood guilt. Abortion today is the modern version of ancient child sacrifice. As the ancients would throw their babies to the fires of Moloch to avert their responsibility, our generation burns the unborn with chemicals in sanitized abortion clinics to avert their responsibility. The ancients justified it with religion. Our generation justifies it with human reason, but it is the same crime. But here's the perplexity of it all. If it's so wrong, how can it be that over 50% of the American public believes it's okay? I mean, we tend to judge right and wrong by cultural standards. If most people think a behavior is okay, we tend to go with the wisdom of the majority. But that is our fatal error. Because when you're living in Sodom and Gomorrah, you're living among a people who are morally depraved. The moral depravity of a population, it starts at 5%, then it moves to 10, and then 20, 30, 40, 50%, and then it hits that critical mark, 51%, where evil becomes legalized, it becomes normalized. And then a society becomes blind morally. Real quick, here are 4 cultural phenomena that cause people to forget the utter evil of abortion. Number 1, religious leaders in America support abortion. Most of the mainline denominations, the United Methodist Church, the Presbyterian Church USA, the Episcopal Church, are all members of the Religious Coalition for Abortion Rights, which is now called the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Freedom. Last year, a group of pastors in Columbus, Ohio, held a blessing at a local Planned Parenthood abortion clinic. But let's remember, it was also the clergy that put Jesus on the cross. Man's religion can be man's rebellion to God. Number 2, as I said, so many people support abortion. And that fools many people's ethical discernment. 1 in 4 women have had an abortion. But the fact that mankind supports a practice never makes it right. Slavery was universally accepted, but it was wrong. In the 1930s, Germany was the most sophisticated, the most advanced country in the world, and they easily justified and tolerated the Jewish Holocaust. Remember, the majority is usually wrong. Never look to the majority to determine your ethics. Just because a people are divided down the middle concerning the rightness or wrongness of an action doesn't make that action a matter of moral freedom, as if nobody's really sure. The presence of a morally obtuse, confused people is always to be expected. Number 3, men and women with unwanted children have to suffer some hardship. But since when do we judge right and wrong by personal convenience? Doing what is right always means a personal sacrifice. Doing what is right is always the hard thing. And number 4, and this is a big one, abortion must be okay because God is not stopping it. Many people believe that if the government is allowing something, or if God, the greater authority, is not stopping something, then it must be permissible. Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 11, because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed quickly, therefore the hearts of the Son of Man among them are given fully to do evil. Now, this is not an indictment against God. It's just a matter of fact. People will do the sins that they can get away with. But we should never judge right and wrong on that basis, on the basis of what we can get away with. Because if we judge right and wrong by what we can get away with, that is the might makes right philosophy that's condemned in the Bible. Micah chapter 2, verse 1. Woe to those who scheme iniquity, who work out evil on their beds. When morning comes, they do it, for it is in the power of their hands. I can do it, so therefore it must be all right. But remember, God will allow evil, and God will allow evil people to be empowered. But he does this simply to expose sin right before he judges it. We're simply in the transition time between the exposing of sin and the judging of sin. So my challenge to you is to be careful not to let the moral blindness of our culture, the moral blindness of the pro-choice crowd, rub off on us. Jesus' final words to his disciples, John 16:2, they will make you outcasts from the synagogue, but an hour is coming for everyone who kills you to think that he's offering service to God. So don't be surprised if evil people have the ability to rationalize the most evil practices imaginable. Even calling evil good and good evil, calling the pro-abortion movement righteousness, and actually calling pro-life evil. Their justifications are not a sign that evil is not so evil, but a demonstration of the greatness of human depravity. Don't lose your godly outrage. Don't lessen your convictions because of the culture. Revelation 21:8. Murderers will have their part in the lake that burns with fire. So we must warn the lost and share with them that Christ died to pay the price for our murders if we come to him in faith and repentance. Well, that's all I have for this week. I'm running a very tight schedule. I don't have time for the commentary on the culture segment. Next week, I'm going to do a 2-part radio series about how to talk politics, a guide to correct those overzealous political junkies who ruin the party with their political rants. Then I'm thinking about doing another program explaining what is happening eschatologically in our country. Thank you for your support. Thank you for making God and country a part of your discipleship in the Word. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to help promote the channel. The contact information is on the closing slide. Feel free to email me with questions, comments, insights. May God richly bless you as you continue in the Word.